Maxed Out Man, helping you become the man you were made to be.
All right. Hey, guys, it's Kevin Davis from the Maxed Out Man podcast, and today we're here with Brett Snodgrass, which is going to be super interesting. Before we get started, I want to remind you, go to maxedoutman.com to learn about memberships and challenges and courses and all the stuff that we offer. Find us on all those social medias as well. So I'm going to do a quick intro for Brett, and then we'll get started. Brett, he's been a full-time real estate investor for, what did you say, 17 years. He specializes in wholesaling, wholetailing, which is a concept I'm not. So I've done a bunch of BR stuff on my own, but never wholesale. Creative financing and scaling a business from a one-man band to an amazing full team running hundreds of deals per year. So congrats on that. That's super awesome. Brett also heads a ministry for men called Iron Deep, which is a unique men's community made up of risk-taking, mission-minded male business leaders who vow to go beyond success to fulfill their significant purpose in Christ. His new book, The Secret War Within, was written to help to driven entrepreneurs in their own internal battles they fight daily that others don't even realize. While it hits some hard and raw issues, it also serves to be a guide for hope and victory. Also has two podcasts, Iron Deep and Simple Wholesaling Podcast, which you said the wholesaling podcast is currently on sabbatical, right? Mm-hmm. A little bit. Yep. And you can find out more about him, and I'll go ahead and put this out there, irondeep.com, and you can find the book in there or at any major retailer. So, hey, Brett, that's a long intro, right? Like I grabbed that, put that stuff together this morning, and it's so thanks for coming. I really appreciate you coming on board. And I have to say, first of all, your team sent me this amazing, like I was like, I have to do this at some point. Has a nice little card. It came in with the book. It's all branded. It has a little like papyrus thing looking with some paper in there, and so I was super impressed.
Yeah, and I probably even sprayed a little cologne on it just to
I
have
did.
a nice touch.
I've been sleeping with it under my pillow. So hey, thanks for coming aboard. That's your basic bio, but I know the story goes so much deeper here, and so feel free to. I'd like to know more about your story, and I know since you do the podcast, this is a little interesting to be on this side of the mic sometimes, because you get to talk about yourself, right? So, which we don't do that often.
Now, number one, Kevin, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I love what you're doing and helping out men and their purpose and having victory in their life. And just kind of saw your transformation over the last several years and just amazing. So thanks again for having me on. And man, just a little bit of bio just to kind of take you guys behind the curtains. Brett Snodgrass, born and raised in Indiana. So I live in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I'm a son of the King, so I'm a Christian man of faith, married to Karen for 11 years, have 4 children. So I'm leading a kind of a chaotic home, right? We got a lot of different moving parts, from a 17-year-old daughter to a 5-year-old daughter and 2 boys in the middle. And I run a real estate business. We're called the Simple Team, Simple Quarters, Simple Wholesaling. We're out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Been doing that 17 years. And we've done 3,000, 3,500 deals. It's been a ride, a lot of ups and downs throughout that, but I got a beautiful team and a beautiful culture. And so I lead that. Last year, God kind of laid on my heart to start this ministry called Iron Deep, just to kind of work with men, Christian men, business owners, and that's just what I am, right? So it's really just working with myself, and we've had a few events, and right now I'm leading 12 guys called the Iron Core. We're kind of doing life together for a year, and I just love what that group's all about. Wrote the book Secret War Within that relates to that ministry as well, and again, pulling back the curtains of men's battles, men's daily battles, the war, the identity, and that's really where the book comes into. And that was a passion project too. So done a lot of different things, and excited to be here, man. So thanks again.
Thanks for coming. I mean, this is something that I really value, because what's the story, right? All entrepreneurs are successful. We don't have any problems. It's super exciting. We make a lot of money. None of those things are true, right? I mean, it can be a little exciting, but there's a lot of, I told my guest yesterday that I recorded with this, like, we go through these times, and I'm kind of in that phase right now for the last month or two where I'm like imposter syndrome and some of those kind of things, right? Like I'm very forward facing in most of my roles. and in different industries. And then at the same time, you like get back to the hotel room and like, dude, I just, am I full of crap? Right. Like I just,
that was a bunch of BS.
yeah. I mean, I
just lied to that audience,
which is not true, but that's like the enemy wants to tell us that that's true for sure. And, you know, for those of you that are not believers that are listening to this, I would encourage you to, you know, we have tons of different guests on this show, right? Like we're not a Christian podcast. I'm not a Christian business owner as I call myself, but I'm a business owner. Like I don't own a Christian business, but I'm a business owner that is a Christian. Amen. And so if you're not a person of faith, I would encourage you to listen along, because I think that you're probably facing the exact same things in your own life that we face. And then there's this certain hope that we have, right? As Christian men, because we have something to lean on that's not just ourselves. Right. And whether you know, go down that road or not, obviously we would encourage you to do that, because it's something that we find hope in. But I hope you'll listen along anyway and learn from us. Actually learn from Brett. I'm just here to, I'm ornamental in this process. But so tell me about, first of all, you know, a little background on me. I actually have done a little bit of BRRRR investing, you know, which is more of the, you know, buy, renovate, you know, rent, repeat, refinance, all of that stuff.
I like all these terms, right? Wholesaling, and then you mentioned wholetailing. You're like, I don't even know what the crap that is. And then the BRRRR, that came out a few years, I don't even, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, probably from Bigger Pockets, started talking about this BRRRR strategy. And and that's the buy, you know, rent, repeat, refinance, all that stuff.
Buy, renovate, refinance, rent, repeat, or something like that. Basically, the idea is you buy a house that needs to be renovated. You you get some creative financing. You do the renovation. You refinance to pull some cash out. If you're lucky, hopefully cash flow positive. And then you just do that over and over and over again. Where wholesaling's different, right? Wholesaling's different. You can explain. I don't know much about wholesaling, you know. So why don't you know, we'll start on the business side a little bit, but then I want to talk about the rest of it even more.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I'll just take you back a little bit. So my parents were teachers, and I went to college to be a teacher, got an elementary education degree, and but I've always been interested in business and creating money. Like I always loved just kind of buying and selling things, whether it was candy at school or cars or stereo systems, and it just happened to be houses. And
you were that little kid with like the trench coat at recess, you know, you got like Mars bars.
I was literally in the 6th grade. I would go to Sam's Club, buy a bunch of candy, take it in at lunch, and sell it for $0.25 a piece to all of my friends. And
that's awesome.
And my pants were like all heavy with all the change in them coming home. But I was always just interested in creating money. I was a pretty good math guy, and so anyways, I went to college, I became a teacher, but I realized, you know, this just wasn't for me, and nothing against teaching. We need some amazing teachers. My parents are good teachers, but honestly, they just don't make any money at the end of the day. And I was about, you know, bringing, wanting to bring wealth, to have financial freedom, and teaching wasn't going to do that for me. So I started really studying and just kind of landed into real estate and read some books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Millionaire Next Door, just started learning about real estate. And we bought our first house in 2007. So take yourself back. 2007's hitting, starting to go down the
great time to buy a house.
Well, I'll tell you.
I mean, but if you're in the business, 2008, 2009 was an amazing time to buy property.
Right. Yes. So 2007, towards the end of 2007, we bought our first house, and it was about $9,000. So just take yourself back. You know, Youngstown, Ohio, bought this just really crappy house for $9,000. We ended up selling it for $15,000. We made $6,000. So that was my very first deal. And at that time, I was like, oh my gosh, $6,000. That's like more money I've ever seen in my entire life. What did we just do? I can't believe it. And then we just rinsed and repeat that. The next year in 2008, when the market was at the bottom, we did 150 of those deals. And the market's just gone up from there. I mean, really, I'm blessed, lucky. I mean, I got in 2007, 2008, and now 2023, right? What have we seen? The market has just gone up. We've just seen an increase, and we thought it was going to crash. It was funny. We saw news articles in 2015. Let's wait for the market to crash. It's right around the corner. And here we are like 8 years later. COVID hits. Yeah. It's going down, baby. Interest rates, it's going down. And here we are. So 17 years in, been very blessed with it. So a little about wholesaling. Yeah. I mean, it's a marketing business. It's a private, we're sending out letters, we're doing cold calling, we're sending out texts. We're just talking to private homeowners to buy their home for cash or in a creative way.
Mhm.
And we do that several times. So we're kind of known in Indianapolis as a really good house buyer. I kind of relate our business to like CarMax in the car industry. So we buy houses. CarMax buys houses. We buy them at a discount. We sell houses, and we also finance houses. So people come to us because we'll sell them our home, and we'll finance it. We'll be the bank. So we're kind of like the CarMax of the real estate industry, and that's a little bit. I also do rentals too. As well. So different types of buckets. Wholesaling is our active income, rentals, and then we also do the seller financing or the bank. So,
and do you make a choice to do the rentals based on, all right, so this house is probably not as valuable as it could be, but if we hold it for a year or 2 years as a rental, then we, can kind of, what's your decision-making process on that side of things?
I don't have a great strategy, honestly, with it. Most of the time our rentals are because we inherited a tenant, because tenant-occupied properties are tough to sell. So maybe there's someone and they have a couple of properties and they just happen to be rented. And we'll say, we'll take it with the tenant. So then we just inherit the tenant and we keep it as a rental. Most of them have happened that way. But some of them are, this will be a nice rental. Let's keep it because I can refinance it and get a lot of money out of it. So it'll be that we'll do the burst strategy on some of them as well. Or a lot of times I'll do like a portfolio refinance. So I'll buy 10 properties and then we'll refinance all 10 of them with a large loan. We do that as well.
Those of you that don't know, and we're recording this at the end of February, so tax season is coming up. This whole tax the rich thing always cracks me up because rich people don't pay taxes.
Right. They don't. Yeah.
The middle class pay taxes, right? So what were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting comment, and I think you got to really just shift your mind around that. I was talking to my CPA, and they're very heavy in the real estate investing, and I probably for the first several years had this misconception of, I make some money, got to pay my taxes. And my CPA, this is probably 4 or 5 years ago, he said, real estate investors don't pay taxes.
Right. Yep.
And he said that, and that just shifted everything for me. I was like, oh, yeah, I don't pay taxes. That real estate investors, we don't pay taxes. So if anyone says, if an investor comes saying, man, I had to pay this huge tax bill, I just say, well, real estate investors don't pay taxes. And if they do, then we got to figure something out. What are they doing wrong, right? I mean, you take Donald Trump. Yeah, he was getting crucified for his taxes, not paying taxes. Real estate, investors don't pay taxes.
Right.
That's all.
I love that comment at that town hall, right? Because and if you go look it up on YouTube, you can see it. And we're not here to talk about politics, but I thought it was a great comment because Hillary Clinton during this town hall was like, "Yeah, Donald Trump doesn't pay his fair share of taxes," and he literally said, "You're right. I don't pay taxes, and neither do any of your friends." Right. And if you don't really, I could do kind of the quick 101, but essentially when you do, so you want to take advantage of the tax laws as much as possible. When you're talking about real estate and refinancing, because you're actually taking out equity on those homes, you can actually pull cash out of that stuff and it's not taxable income. And so someone like Donald Trump, who owns like $8 billion worth of real estate, like he's probably his people just constantly refinance everything.
Yeah.
Even at different interest rates and all that, because that's how he pulls cash out. Yeah. But he doesn't pay tax on that. Right. So if you're not investing in real estate, it's definitely something to look into. It's not risk-free. Obviously there's a lot there, but.
And really, that's why I started buying rentals, is because my CPA said that comment. He said, real estate investors don't pay taxes. And I said, oh, why pay taxes? How do I not pay taxes? And he said, well, you got to buy some rentals. You got to do some cost segregation. You got to do forced depreciation. You got to do all these different things to force depreciate your assets. And then you don't pay taxes. Anyways, that's a whole long-winded another podcast. But at the end of the day, that's why I have rentals.
Yeah. So, this isn't a real estate podcast, but it's something that I think all of us as because we got a lot of guy entrepreneurs listen to this, and this is a great opportunity, but it's not like when you go on the internet, right? Everything is burr this and burr that, get rich. And, there's some very definitive strategies that you need to have. So take some, find someone that can teach you how to do this correctly. make sure you get some cash on the hand. There's different, obviously that other people's money thing is always fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like a business like yours is awesome because with me, we have to go find hard money lender guys. We have to kind of go through that process, and then we do refinances. And if you've gone through a mortgage process since 2009, it's a pain in the ass. So
it is
for sure.
It is. And most of the private, and that's just the whole different ball game. But I got into private money lenders several years ago. So this is just John, the doctor, that I call up and say, "Hey, I got a house." He says, "How much you need?" 150,000. It's there tomorrow. That's the difference between private money and the hoops of hard money or traditional money. So that's just what I got into. So I got several private money partners. They just trust us. They've been lending for years, and it just changes the game. So all these things, again, it's just wealth building strategies that I love. I mean, I love creating. I love building it. So it's fun.
So talk to me about that journey. So you've been doing this for 17 years. All of us love this stuff if we're entrepreneurs. We love this journey. We love the excitement, but at the same time, there's this other side of this coin, right? Like there's the long nights or stressing about overhead or stressing about that next deal or if the deal falls through or if a renter trashes the house or talk to me about that journey and how you started to develop kind of this, hey, I can learn from this and help other men to deal with this as well. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think your podcast really talks about just kind of the lonely road of the entrepreneur, the business owner, and I think that men are starting to talk about that a little bit more. But here's the way it looks. We have it all together. We don't have much problems. We make the money. We always have our masks on. We always have to lead everything. So we're leading our businesses. We can't talk to our employees about really anything. We're leading our family. We're trying to lead our health. But really we're sacrificing a lot. So our neck is always on the line. So you talk about just kind of the pressure, some anxiety, some stress with it. And, if your neck is always on the line, like an employee, they can walk away at any time and maybe they lose a couple of months of paychecks. They get a different job. Your neck is on the line. And I've had to, walk through that for 17 years. People have come into the business and go, our neck's on the line. I can't get away from that. Again, I've made promises as an entrepreneur. You're making promises. I got private lenders I've made promises to. I've got employees I've made promises to. I have to not only feed my own family, I got to feed 16 other people's families. They're counting on that. And you got to kind of keep the machine going. So some of the things, anxiety, stress. I've had late nights. I've been to the doctor's office, had heart checkups, stress tests. My wife has seen it, going through some of these different things. So there's some darkness to it. There's some loneliness to it. And, but then there's obviously rewards. It's fun. You can control your own schedule, have freedom, make as much as what you want, lead team, impact people's lives. So there's all that too. So really, Iron Deep was kind of born about a year ago. And, I was kind of in part of different mastermind groups. I was part of some church groups. We talk about faith. So I've had that world. I was also part of real estate mastermind groups and part of that world. And again, some of the same stories. Guys were very publicly successful, but privately were struggling. Privately, their families were struggling. They were going through relationship issues or divorces or kid issues. Raise your hand if the entrepreneurial world or the businessman struggles with being a father, because it's hard because you're leading all these different things, and sometimes your family gets the leftovers. So they were struggling with that. They were struggling with their health, addictions, alcohol, pornography, all these different things. And and again, some of these groups were great. They helped my business and they were great. But still, I didn't have like a lot of deep relationships coming out of there. We talked about business. We talked about money. We talked about sales. We talked about growth. But I still couldn't call a lot of those guys and be like, man, I'm struggling with this, or let's celebrate, because I had this. Like we were still kind of in for it for ourselves. And, we're still just sharing our highlight reels, just like you do on social media. And it just wasn't that. So really Iron Deep was born of iron sharpening iron, but then just going deep with God and deep with each other. Like, hey, let's just take off the masks. Let's be honest. Let's just lay it all out and let's challenge each other, but let's also celebrate each other. So that's where this whole group kind of was born.
And how long is that process to get someone? First of all, let me say it is interesting that to be able to find your people, right? I've made the statement a few times. I don't really like people, but I really like my people.
Yes, I understand.
Because I live in a place. I live in small town Montana, and there's not just a huge amount of entrepreneurs, right? So like most of my friends live all over the world, and so we do Zoom calls, we do phone calls and all that, and I've got a couple of them that I can say, dude, this weekend sucked, like I'm just down, tell me like what do I need to do to change my mindset about this? But that's hard. I don't really have anybody I could just go sit down to lunch today and have that conversation, and I'm sure that most people do. What is it? I do want to point out one thing that you said, and that stress and that anxiety. Someone said to me over the weekend, so my wife was a stay-at-home mom. She took early retirement out of PR when we basically had our first child. And we've been married 28 years. If you listen to the podcast, you know that because I talk about this all the time. How awesome it is. But someone mentioned, like, he said to me, he said, I don't think most people understand the pressure when you are 100% responsible for the entire security of a family. Right. And in your case, I have some part-time employees and that kind of stuff, but I'm not responsible for the livelihood of 16 other people. Right. So I can imagine that so then you're taking on your own family, but then you're, responsible for all these other families. What do you think about that? Like, is that something that you see?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, most of my friends, business owners, many of their wives stay home. Because again, they make quite a bit of money, and, their wives, want to be a stay-at-home mom. My wife, Karen, she has been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years now. And
by the way, it's the best thing ever. And it's way harder than anything we do as entrepreneurs. Let me point that out.
Yes,
first of all. So
it is. Yeah. I was having a conversation with a mentor of mine. He's like, to look and see what my wife actually does. Like I would probably pull my hair out. That'd be really stressful, really anxiety. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the pressure is obviously there, and as an entrepreneur, right? I mean, you're kind of starting from nothing. I mean, yeah, you get your systems, you get your processes, then you start to get confidence, you get traction. But really, too, we're rolling the dice. I mean, I'm making educated decisions, but this is all risk that we're buying these houses thinking, hey, we're going to make a profit, so we can make a lot of money, but we can also lose a lot of money.
And those of us that have been doing it for a while, we have those years. It's like, hey, I made $250,000. Hey, I made minus $200,000.
Yeah. So I think that's some of it. And I think it's just, I think the healthy marriage, right? We just kind of understand each other. She is supportive of me because she sees me a little bit. She sees what I'm kind of going through, but I also see and try to support her and see kind of what she's going through. And it's just this nice teamwork, this kind of dance that we kind of go through. But I think, a lot of my friends, men, they can get stressed out if things aren't going well. We're supposed to be this man, this provider, and you really want to kick a man down is when he can't provide for his family.
Yeah.
That's when it gets real. And your identity and all your stuff comes out is when you can't provide. Maybe you can't be the weight you want to be, or maybe you can't do some of that stuff. But if you can't support your family, then that's where it gets pretty raw. So
yeah, because that's like the core of most men, I think. And I think, and we can talk about this, but I think now in today's society, that's becoming less so, which I think is causing this identity crisis in men, because it is, I believe, innate and God-given, right? Like we are the providers, we're the hunter-gatherers and all that. And, but it's that fear, when we have those months where, hey, it's wintertime. And in my case, I own a bunch of brands on the internet. So in the automotive space, so the last few months are a little bit slower. And then I start going, oh, crap, what am I going to do? How do I need to bring this up? This is, and it's not just like, oh, I'm single and I want to make, and I want to be able to buy my cell phone next.
Right.
It's just that, hey, how do I pay the mortgage? How do I pay, how do I make sure my kids are taken care of and my wife is taken care of and all that? And so, that pressure is definitely something that's interesting. Did your wife, what I'm curious, because my story is kind of interesting, but did your wife grow up in an entrepreneurial situation? And how does that affect that? Because I'm leading the conversation a little bit.
Yeah.
But.
No. Yeah. You're good. If you ever taken kind of personality tests, like an Enneagram, disc test, like, so for me, if you check out some of my tests, I am all risk. Like, I don't need much security.
Mm-hmm.
I am a quick starter. I fly by my seat sometimes. I love challenges. I love new things. I don't like routine sometimes. I struggle with that. Details, I struggle with that. And my wife is exactly opposite. She loves details. She loves routines, that she could eat the same thing every single day, every single meal. Um, she wants 100% security, no risk, no debt. So that's how she operates, and that's how her parents operate. So she grew up and no debt. Her dad and mom built their home in 1981, and they still live in that exact same home, never mortgage on it, never any debt ever. Dave Ramsey, 100% all the way. And then she marries me, and I'm just like, let's just roll the dice.
Yeah.
So has it been a challenging? Sometimes. I mean, I run the business, I run the financials, I pay the bills, I do, that's just kind of like my role in our home, and she glues everything else together. So, we talk about some things, but when it comes to really the nitty gritty business, she probably is an unknown, because it might scare or freak her out. Like, we talk about our bills, things like that, but the business stuff, yeah, that's more of my plate. So
it's so crazy and so funny. And I'd love to hear from other men that, other married men, and maybe you can point to this, but my wife is exactly the same. My wife's dad was a LA fireman. He did 20 years. He retired. They never did any debt. We used to teach Dave Ramsey at church.
Yeah.
And granted, I've made some poor decisions that have gotten me upside down in debt and trying to, consumer debt and crap like that. So there is that, but she is very risk averse. And like, it's something over the last 30 years that we've struggled constantly with. Like, I had a real job up until like 99. So I've been self-employed for 27 years or something like that. And I've just, and it's just, that's how I run. I run exactly like what you're describing. She runs exactly like your wife, more or less. And so like I took over the finances. Yeah. She used to be like, the joke was, she could tell me how much change I had in my pocket or sitting on my desk. Like she knew the budget to that. And she finally decided, she's like, look, this stresses me out too much. I can't, too much. Yeah. I can't do it when I see, a new real estate loan for $200,000 or, whatever those things are.
Right.
And try to manage business debt and, all those different loans that we get. And so,
I think we joke around too. It's like, I think if it was up to my wife, she would probably have desired maybe a 9-to-5 person, at least the times of 9 to 5, because there's been seasons where I've had to work a lot, that I did think about the business, that I woke up early before anyone was up, and I'm up at 5 a.m. trying to do payroll or figure things out during certain seasons. Or I think that she would have maybe thought, hey, I'm gonna marry a 9-to-5 person. But she didn't. And I think that's I think one of the misconceptions is people, my uncle told me this, like, you're so lucky. You own your own business. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it. And honestly, sometimes during certain seasons, the truth is we've traded a 9-to-5 for 24/7.
Right.
And we got that pressure. I mean, there's certain times where I make payroll and I got $400 in the bank and I just paid out $70,000 in payroll. It's just kind of crazy. Yeah. So, that's
they say I'm glad, I love having a 120 hour a week job, so I don't have to have a 40-hour a week job.
Yeah, no, definitely. So there's been some conversations with her, but we work it out. We balance each other out. I mean, I pull her into more adventurous things, and she grounds me with things as well. So
that's exactly our story. My wife, and having the freedom is always great. One of my first businesses was web development. So back in the day, I mean, this is like in the early 2000s. So, so we really could do it from anywhere that I had an internet connection. And they're not as prevalent now as they were not as prevalent then as they are now.
Yeah.
But I think that's great. way to look at it in terms of like, how do you deal with that? What are those conversations that you have? Because I think women, by and large, want the security, because security tends to be much more important to most of them, but they also desire that adventure. At least in my case. So my wife was like a stay-at-home mom turned, off-roader, rally car builder, welder, like all these crazy things once the kids left home. But it was my entrepreneurial spirit that kind of drove her to this adventure. And she's like, yeah, it's scary as hell a lot of times, but I wouldn't trade the adventure part of it. I think she'd trade the stress on in a lot of cases, right, but not the adventure. What kind of conversations do you recommend having with it? Like, how do you navigate that, to have that kind of like, hey honey, it's all going to be okay, or just like, you just ignore it. I'll make sure it happens.
I think, it's just that my wife's the same way. I think that she maybe would like some of that 9 to 5, but she also loves the freedom. She loves the adventure. She loves that I don't have to call in to call off of work, or if we want to go on vacation, we don't have to count our pennies, I guess, right? And be like, oh, well, we gotta, we can't go out to eat, stuff like that. So it's been nice with that. I think it's just I think just being aware, right? And then just celebrating with who each other is, that sometimes we can have friction, and, I'm this risk-taking adventure guy and I want to just travel the world and do all these crazy things. And you want to, you're a homebody and want to stay home and you're good. And you just want to be home by yourself. That's where you find peace at. And that can cause some friction, but I think it's just, having those, being aware and just celebrating each other in that. And, I have these strengths, she has these strengths, and maybe just trying to do something. We saw some marriage coaches about a year ago, and that really helped. So it's a lot of times, we're focused on our marriage is focusing on their problems, some of their issues, but like, can you focus on your purpose? Like, and what are your strengths? What is your purpose? And you have these overlapping things. Like, honestly, really, if you look down at it, you want the same thing. You want these same things. So what are those overlapping things? And then can you look at your life and be like, okay, how can we design some of these things that we overlap on? Some of these things that Brett wants to do, some of these things that Kara wants to do. What are the things that we want to do together? So for example, like we love doing events, we love hospitality, we love all that. So like I was doing this Iron Deep, right, with these men's ministry and men. And I said, well, some of these guys, it's, man, I love to bring my wife. Well, I'm like, well, how about we do a couples thing? So we're doing that this year, so I can do it with my wife. So these are something like we're overlapping on that we can do together. So just finding some commonality there. That we can do things together. So I think just focusing on the purpose and the alignment versus the problem and the friction. So I don't know if that helps at all, but
that's 100%. We've gone to counseling probably 7 or 8 times in our marriage, and counseling or coaching. Sometimes there's some crisis things that we need to deal with, but most of the time I call it it's like changing your oil in your marriage, right? We went to a week-long retreat in Colorado called Crossroads, which is an absolutely great Christian retreat kind of center thing, and they do some deep work there, which was crazy stuff, but super breakthrough. We went there because we weren't really sure post kids, right? First of all, empty nesting is awesome,
right?
But we weren't really sure like what the next 40 years of our marriage looks like, right? We're hoping to live a long, happy life. And so we went there to try to do what you're talking about. It's like, all right,
your season's changed.
Right. I'm not really a winter guy. We live in Montana, but if you let me travel and you let me go someplace warm, then I'm a little bit, I can kind of get that balance and maintain those things. And
me too.
And actually it's kind of crazy, because I used to be pissed off whenever I used to have to go move snow, and because I'm like, what a waste of time this is. Right. I just spent 3 hours moving snow. It's going to snow overnight, and I get to do it all over again tomorrow. So I had this just like bitter heart, right? And just every time it snowed, I would kind of go down this road. My kids stopped following me on social media from like October to March, because they knew I was going to post crabby things on Facebook, which is kind of funny. But we went to this counseling center, and I completely changed my ideology about the blessings that we have. And so now I go out, I put, I put my headphones on, I put some worship music on, and like, I'm just thankful to be able to have the home we do, have a long driveway that we have to shovel and plow with the tractor, and having the tractor itself is a blessing.
Yeah.
But it's that mental shift. But like being able to go and do that deep work is something that really helped us, because she had this fear, right? We're always based on fear. She had this fear that because of this, I was going to make her move to someplace stupid like California, which I thankfully I have never done.
So you probably complained every winter. I'm sure that you complain. You're like, why do we live here? I'm sure you asked that question.
Yeah. There's a Calvin and Hobbes, that Calvin and Hobbes thing that gets posted. Why do I live someplace where the air hurts my face? But we do the same thing, and we ask that, and typically it's after a big ice storm or like 0 degree weather, and then that's when we're like, why do we live here? When that might happen a few days a year, but we ask that, and but I think it's like the renewing the mind of changing that perspective, being thankful for the blessings that you have, and your season's changed. It brought me back to a few years ago. I was able to step out of the business into what they call the owner's box. So if you think of sports teams, typically the CEO, the owner, he's coaching the team, right? Well, I was able to actually hire a CEO, and I stepped into the owner's box. This happened 3-4 years ago. And I went from literally all in to not having anything to do. And that was a difficult season, because 14 years I'm running this business, and then I'm struggling with my own identity. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And then we went through some counseling with that, because I was like, what do I do? I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am anymore, right?
Right. No one calls me. No one asks me to do anything. And we realize how much your identity gets wrapped into. We complain about people needing us. And then when they don't need us, we're like, no one needs me. And
did that cause you to be more needy with your family? Like,
I think so. Like I
you kind of expected her to take over, take over that role. Yeah,
I think so. And I kind of took all the leadership in my business and I poured it into my family. Like, we're going to do this, and our family's going to be perfect, and we're going to do this and homeschool, and we're going to travel the world. It's going to be great. And then she's like, no, we're not. And I was like, oh, crap.
Could you go get a part-time job at Lowe's or something?
Yeah. Can you be a greeter? Get out of the house.
And so how'd you transition into that? Like, how did you, because, I mean, and we can take it down to the very basics, which is if your identity is completely tied into what you do for a living, whether you're the CEO, owner, or if you're an employee, manager, or whatever, I think men tend to do that. I mean, I know I do that 100%.
Yeah. I think, I think it's this balancing act of, wrapping your identity completely in it, but it's like, it's what we do, but really just shifting it to like, number one, I love to create. I love to lead. I love to impact people's lives. And that really kind of led me into, more of this men's ministry of Iron Deep. So like, that's why retired people die, because they don't have anything to do. Like, that's idle hands are not good. Right. So finding meaning, finding purpose is very, very important. So it kind of led me into Iron Deep, into the ministry. And that's kind of, where we landed. But it's funny how then I started that, and then my CEO took another job. So I'm back in the real estate too. So now I'm balancing both things.
It kind of goes that way, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you actively, you're going to replace that
I don't
CEO
know.
role?
I think everything's a learning season. I took my hands completely off for about 3 years. And I think that was not maybe the best move. I need to be involved. I think I need to be sharp, it goes back to iron sharpening iron. If you're not engaged, you lose your sharpness. And so it took me about 6 months to even get my sea legs back, because I was kind of not sharp anymore. I was out of shape, right? It's like, if you don't work out for 6 months or 3 years, you're going to struggle, right? So it's kind of like that. So I would say, yes, I'm putting pieces in place right now to delegate more, because that's my personality, but I don't see myself getting completely out in the owner's box anymore.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's because I think those of us that are entrepreneurs, I love the creating process.
Yeah.
Michelle jokes and says, your hobby is literally creating new businesses,
Yeah.
which is,
A lot of times it's just you just create chaos and problems.
Yeah,
too.
create chaos. Yeah, that's like I was about to say. I don't really recommend that because it's not necessarily something that leads to great success. But let's talk more about the ministry. I want to talk more about like that transition and like how that got laid on your heart. Kind of how you went through that process of transitioning more into that. Like what's your heart for leading men, and how do you lead men from a Christian perspective? Like we do the same thing, events and retreats and, all that stuff. We're working more towards that in 2024, but we don't do it from like, hey, this is you're a son of the living God. This is your purpose. This is how you lean into that. But I'm trying to weave that spirituality from a Christian perspective into that. Right. And so there's this difference between, this is a definitive men's ministry where we can approach it like this. And this is more of a, my own ministry. Someone actually said, hey, look, Maxed Out Man is your ministry, whether you want it to say it is or not. It's just not more formal. Right. But I'm interested in that kind of how that transition happened. Because it's not like you're a lay pastor that went to seminary and all of those things. So you're leading men as what probably is a lay pastor type role. Just talk about that. That wasn't really a question there, but I'm just interested in kind of that whole process and how you view it and how it works. And
yeah, there's a lot of great programs out there. Yours is an amazing program. There's a lot of men's types of ministries that are great programs. A lot of churches that are great. I think for me, like I was just kind of looking for something different. Churches are great. I go to church. I don't always agree with how we do church in today's world, by being shoulder to shoulder and listening to content by one person. So, we have small groups in church. That's great. And then we got these business groups. That's good. We learn about business. Really, I think for me, I was just searching for just a depth to it all. I was searching for, a deeper brotherhood, guys that I could really, do life with, that I could celebrate with, that I could just tell anything to without absolutely no judgment, nothing at all. And they would be there. And that's the desire for Iron Deep, just building that brotherhood. It's tough, right? Because it takes time. You asked about how do we get there. We kind of start off with the Men's Awakening, and this is a 3-day intensive retreat. We've had a couple of those in the mountains, so we typically sleep under one roof. So you think about your old youth days, maybe church camp, retreats, things like that. This is some, but this is 30, 40, 50-year-old, 60-year-old guys. We're sleeping under one roof. We're doing life together, breaking bread together. We're going through some programs. We're doing small groups. We're doing some alone time in the mountains. And it is a Christian retreat to find your identity. A lot of it's just wrapped into that identity of who the Father says you are. Who do you think He is? Who do you think each other are? And a lot of it is wrapped into that. And then with this iron core, we go in deeper into 3 areas. So number 1 is our faith. Number 2 is our family, and how do we lead that well? And then number 3 is our businesses, because God designed us to be business. I'm not a pastor. I didn't go to seminary school. But I think, right, if from a biblical perspective, none of the disciples did either. And I think we just need more people just to do it out of the passion of their hearts, not to get paid for it. Nothing against that. But I just think that's where we're going. And I think maybe Iron Deep's offering something that maybe the church isn't right now, that a lot of churches aren't. And the response has been overwhelmingly good. And I think, and I'm trying to put my finger on it, and I think maybe it's just because, we're all looking for that community of like-minded guys that know what each other's going through, and that's just what it is. And so again, it's business guys, so they have a different perspective on their life versus maybe someone else that doesn't run a business. And we're all looking for that brotherhood, that group. And if you don't have that, that's what I'm looking for. And I was like, and I was trying to like find it, and I couldn't quite find it. So
I'm gonna go create it.
I guess so. Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna create this, and it's no better or worse than anything else out there. It's almost this environment of raw honesty. Come as you are. Let's love each other as we are. Let's challenge and celebrate each other, and let's just do it together. And it's just guys living on mission together. So in the 3 areas we really focus on are again, faith, family, and business. And so that's just what it is.
Yeah, I found it really difficult, like I said earlier, is, to try to find my people. And so that's what you need to be with your people, and the buzzword right now is tribe, which is whatever. But you want to be with other men that share similar backgrounds and demographics and day to day and all those, because then that faith aspect of it gets wrapped into that part of your identity. Someone made the comment to me, which I wanted to punch them, in Jesus' name, we'll say. But they made a statement that, like, look, we're all in church together. We all love Jesus. And so we should all be really connected. And I'm like, no, that's not true. Like because I just can't connect. There are certain people that I'm not going to be able to connect with on a very deep level, right? Like I can connect over being a Christian and, all of those things that wrapped up into that. But if I want to talk about what it's like on a daily basis to be an entrepreneur and try to wrap my faith into that and try to lead a God-led life, it's very, very difficult, because I can't look around our church. We have a pretty small church, and say, hey, that guy I know is going through the same crap I am, because there aren't any guys like that in my area. Or in my church. Anyway, there are definitely those in my area. So you're able to create this environment to where men are literally just surrounded by other men like them. Right.
Yeah.
Which probably opens up that gateway in order to deeper converse.
Yeah. And we can just have different conversations, and you can have different conversations in business groups, but let's just say, hey, what's your goal for this month? I want to cut down 500,000 in debt. That topic probably didn't go well in the small group. You're like, what? Huh? What are you doing?
Right. Yep.
Or the faith, right? Man, I'm struggling. I want to really just dig into intimacy with the Father, and that might not go over well with the business group. So really just kind of like like-minded brothers, getting together. And I think I was trying to identify again, so it's part of getting together, but it's also part of raising up the intensity. And I think that, I know you're a big fitness guy. I'm sure, you do, maybe there's tribes that you work out with. The CrossFit community obviously is blown up. There's other groups and community of fitness groups blowing up. I go to my church. I just got from this morning, we got 20 guys that show up. We work out together.
Nice.
And there's something about that. It raises up the intensity when you're doing things together, or doing something on mission type of together. And I always related it back to maybe like the military, or guys that are going into battle together. There's this unspeakable bond that most of them would die for the other one, right?
Yeah.
So you look at that and you're like, what is it about that? And that's what I've been thinking, even with Iron Deep and our Iron Core group, is you think about all the guys' movies. Typically it's because there's men on mission together. Men want meaning, they want purpose, they want mission, they want to do something that's impactful, that has meaning. And that's really what we're all about, what we're trying to do together for in a faith perspective for the kingdom. So definitely.
That's a great mission to be on, and having those parallel paths between business, mission, and, family, marriage, all those things, because all of that fits together. We talk about man, marriage, and mission, and those are, we all have different pillars, right, that we work through. But part of the mission part of it is, what your faith looks like, what's your purpose, what's your legacy, all of those things.
Yeah.
And, we as Christian men have a little bit of a not a different one, but we have that side of us that we can wrap into that. And the good news is we have a pretty good book that tells us how to do that. and we have support, in order to do that from God and all that.
And it's like you, it really just boils down to just the intentionality. And if we never drift towards better, we never drift towards a good marriage. We always drift towards selfishness, which relates into division of you and your wife. Or you never drift towards just this amazing dad. You never drift towards this entrepreneur. You never drift towards God, honestly, because you got the flesh and the spirit, because you got your own desires, your own selfishness. I want what I want it now, and Brett gets the glory. That's really my flesh talking, and there's just this just constant battle of that. So, but to have that group that kind of knows that and to support each other with that, and just to be really intentional. Again, it's not just we're not going just to hang out, just to be a social club. Like there's some of that. But you can get that at your country club, but we're going there for a purpose. We're going to be intentional. We're going to help each other grow. We're going to be on mission. That's who's here. And if you don't want that, then that's the country club. So,
yeah, which, honestly, it's much more fulfilling and to have all of those things and just going hitting golf balls and, whatever. So, yeah. And I would guess that that's something that it makes it easier for the men to open up and to really kind of delve into some of those things that they don't share anywhere else. And I realize that that's kind of a process.
And I think there's the other thing too. There's the organic guys hang out, and that's obviously part of that too. But in my experience, that just doesn't happen very well in my experience. Maybe because I'm not as intentional, but I get busy. I'm task oriented. I'm running this thing. I'm running my business, and I forget to call. So it's nice to have a scheduled rhythm of getting together, of a structure. For me, that's what I have desired, because if I don't, it just doesn't happen. Like for working out, for example, if you don't have a plan and you just wake up like, I have no idea what I'm going to do, it just don't happen. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that intentionality thing is really important because, as men, I think, especially as entrepreneurs, we'll always find something else to do.
Yeah.
And then it's this balance between legalistic approach to those, and the buzzword or the big word is spiritual disciplines, right? Is versus being legalistic about it versus like having a genuine heart to do it. And I tend to rebel against legalism side of things. Like if you tell me, oh, well, you have to be doing your Bible time every day for 30 minutes or whatever, like I'm going to rebel against that. But if you say, hey, be in the presence of God all day, be thankful, practice gratitude, those things that I do, then I feel much more connected than that. And, to your point, again, there's nothing like, Western church is an interesting place these days. And there are times that I go on Sunday and I'm like, I feel worse after church than I did before I went to church.
Right.
And that's not a great place to be, obviously, but I think that all that to say, we need groups like what you're discussing and what you're running and have led with in order to be able to have that connection. I'm curious about something that we've talked about in the past, in my own groups and family and all that. Is this sort of like being a wealthy business owner as it relates to our faith and Christianity? Because I think sometimes it's easy, and I know my wife has been this way, and we're not rich, right? We're not at all. We're moderately successful, upper middle class. But there have been times when she has been like, I feel trepidation in inviting people over to our home, because she feels almost guilty about having success. And I it's kind of an off the beat question, but I'm kind of curious about your thoughts about that. Cause I would venture to say you're more financially successful, which is fine. Like, I love that because I can learn from you on this, but that seems to be like this judgmental thing with Christians to say, well, must be nice, right? Like that's the great phrase and how that kind of gets wrapped up. I will say that I generaled my own house. I built this house. I didn't frame it, but I did, 60% of the work. And no one knows that.
Is your wife telling that during her tour?
No, she doesn't. She doesn't say that.
By the way, my husband built this and we saved half the money.
Yeah. Well, and she did it too. Like, we put in all the wood floors together. We put the tile in. We actually, right now we're building a 3,400 square foot shop by ourselves. The two of us did all that. And so this shed that's 3,400 square foot that could have cost $500,000, maybe costs 150 grand, So,
Yeah.
but that this whole like, the pauper and being poor and the widow's mite and all these things that we kind of wrap that up. And then you have Solomon, who was, the richest man on earth by 100 times of any wealth that we have now. I'm just, as a successful business guy and a believer, what do you think about all that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think everything just kind of flows through the heart. So I think it's just a heart posture, and I think that I think it's whatever the purpose is behind it. If your purpose is to have a nice home that you can have the spiritual gift of hospitality and then bring people in and to have them feel at home and to serve them, I think that's an amazing thing. And if you live in a beautiful area and you're around God's creation because you love the nature and everything that provides, and you have land with it, I think that's awesome. So I think it's just, for me, the perspective is it's just all his anyways. I think it's just what's the heart posture behind it, what's the purpose behind it, and because we can all go down that particular road. So.
Right.
So yeah, when you invest into something or buy something, yeah, what's the purpose behind it? So
I can't remember it. I can barely see it, but I think it's like Joshua. What does that say? Joshua. Wait, maybe it says John 12. And there's I have this over my desk. That's why I'm looking over there. But it says basically, if I start thinking that I did all this, I'm missing the point.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like that's the thing I try to remind myself, because God's given me certain skills, knowledge, intelligence, network, whatever those blessings are. But if I see that as if, hey, this is something I've done, and I forget the fact that it's really all his anyway, then that gets a little bit derailing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But I get it. I mean, I've been down that road. I probably lean more towards, your wife's heart, probably, right? I mean, I drive a beater truck. Our house is nice, but it's definitely not. We could afford more, right? And but I probably something inside of me says, oh, but I shouldn't, because
I don't want to be a show off, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Well, neither do I, because I'm a DIY guy. So like, if you look around this house, I didn't hire anybody to do 90% of what you see when you look around it. And so, which I can take pride in that, to say, yeah, we have nice things, but we also did it. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
I probably would have leaned more towards doing and not doing any of it and hiring it all.
It's a good balance. Well, hey, I want to be respectful of your time. I'm curious what kind of advice that you would give to men, Christian or not, that are kind of struggling in these areas that you're working on, concentrating on. Kind of a couple pieces of advice for them before we wrap up.
Yeah. I would say, I don't think that we as men reflect, and are still and reflect that much. We don't really, we just go, we just do, we go, we get in the weeds, and we wake up 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later, and we just started asking, why did I do that? What was the point? What did I even want? I don't know what I wanted. So I think it's just take some time and just start writing out, your desires, Christian or not Christian. What are some of your desires? What are some of your dreams? What do you want the next 5 years to look like? Look at the 5 years. So one of the things that we might do is, hey, 5 years, my daughter's going to be 22. My son's going to be getting his driver's license. He's 11 now. What do I want this to really look like? And I'm more of a relational guy. So it's like, I want to make sure I connect my family. I want to make sure that we're connecting. So what do I have to do to do that? So just taking some time to reflect and just be honest with yourself. Like, where really are you? What's the reality? And maybe you need some help with that. Maybe you need some guys to help you with your reality. Probably a couple of things you can do is look at your bank statements. That's probably going to give you a little bit of a reality of what you're spending your money on. To know priorities, you need to ask yourself, how do you spend your time? So check your calendar. How do you spend your money? And then what do you think about mostly? That's the most important things in your life, whatever that looks like. So that's how you can get radically honest with yourself. So be radically honest with yourself, and then where do you want to go?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you want to go? So
I love it. Well, the book is The Secret War Within, which I said up front that I'd listened to maybe a third of it. And so and what's funny is that I was listening to it at kind of faster speed because I got the audio version. You sent me that nice book. But at some point I'm like, look, I feel like I'm prepared enough to be able to have this conversation, but I want to go back and listen to this book again at normal speed so I can garner more from it. And I think it's very well written. I love the allegory storyline of it because it's not like, preachy. It's very, it reminded me a little bit like, and this is more of a woo-woo book, but there was some weird stuff. The Shack, right? The Shack had kind of this storyline aspect of it. And anyway, it's a great book. So The Secret War Within, you can go to irondeep.com. It's available on Amazon and audiobook and all these things. It's great. It's a great read. You are formally invited to come to a men's retreat in Montana in the summertime. If you want, we can collab on that a little bit.
Yeah.
But so how else, anything else you want to share on how we find you?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, if you're interested in, what we're doing, check out irondeep.com. You can contact us just through the website, or my email is Brett, BRETT @irondeep.com. Our events are on there. Books on there, so check that out. We also have the podcast. You can check that out, the Iron Deep podcast as well. And look forward to chatting if you're interested.
Awesome. Thanks, Brett. Have a good day.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
If you're looking to really maximize your life and become the man you were made to be, head over to maxedoutman.com and get your journey started today.